Good morning. This is Kenton for Dreams Cloud. We're back in the studio today with Andrew Paquette. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning, Kenton.
Andrew and I have started a series of interviews here. I highly recommend you listen to the first two before we dive into this one. Um, we started to talk to Andrew about validation of dreams, and some very important concepts came across. And one of the uh, concepts that needs clarification here is this: the internal focus or internal dimensions of a dream versus an external focus. And I think I'll just turn this over to Andrew and we'll dive in.
Okay, thank you, Kenton. As I see it, there is a prevailing theory on the source of dreams, and it is what I would call an internal focus for the dream. So it's something that's coming from within. This is the traditional psychological theory behind where dreams come from. So you have your subconscious mind that has various ideas or fantasies or thoughts or concerns, worries, desires, etc., and they bubble up to the surface in a dream state. And so this is what the majority of your dreams are made of. There's also another theory that goes along with it called day residue, and what this is that the events of the day, the previous day that is, and or maybe even just recent occurrences, perhaps or a little earlier in the week, would come up to the surface and you'd construct your own stories or fantasies out of these, and you may actually incorporate into them your wishes and desires for changes or modifications, and then these can become what we're familiar with as our dreams. Now, in my database of dreams, which is very, very large. It's an unusually large collection of dream records. I have, at best, a handful of examples that could be described as day residue, but they could also be described as precognitive. It's just that the information in the examples is so generic, it's really hard to say it's definitely a dream of the future as opposed to a dream of the same event happening the day before because it was a common event. But my records really don't support the theory of day residue at all. And in addition, they don't really support the idea of an internal origin for dreams either, at least not for the ones that are psi. For the non-psi dreams, I'm completely open to the idea that that's possible. But for the psi dreams, I look at it as having an external focus. So what I mean by that is if I, in a dream, am remembering that I have changed my focus to a person I know in a different part of the country, and I go and I see that person, and I see what that person's doing, and then I come back and I remember it, and then I call them on the phone, and they're able to verify that, yes, indeed, that's what they were doing. And I call that an external focus because I was really doing something. It wasn't just some idea that popped up in my mind that had no external reference point. My external reference point in that case is a real person in a real place that's distant from my location. Another external reference point would be I have a dream of a spirit guide coming to me and giving me a spiritual lesson of some kind. That's external because I'm viewing the spirit guide as being a real entity, not as being some creation of my subconscious, but somebody or something that is real. And you might think, well, that's kind of a strange idea to give identity and uniqueness to these entities that might otherwise be called dream characters. And in fact, they are called dream characters in some circles. But if a dream entity of that type, or a dream character, we'll call them that for now, comes to me in a dream and says, come with me, let me show you something, and it happens to be a certain event that really happens later on in the future, as did happen with the Ramstein airshow disaster, I had a spirit guide come to me in a dream and say, let me show you this, and I go there, and he shows me the Ramstein airshow disaster 2 weeks before it happens. And then I wake up, I remember this, and 2 weeks later it happens and I've got my verification. So I don't see how it makes sense that an internally created and projected dream character is going to give me information about the future. And now you might say, well, maybe it did because somehow you have a way to calculate what this future event would be. It's one of many possibilities, and then you just dressed it up in the clothing of this dream character so that it would make sense to you. But then I have other dreams of these dream characters where they really do take on their own independent qualities, where they'll tell me, like for instance, sometimes in a dream I will this is going to sound strange, but I will actually black out in the middle of the dream. So I'll be having a dream, I'll be experiencing something, and then I will literally black out. I'll be aware that I'm blacked out, and then I'll come back, and the spirit guide is there, and he'll say, "You weren't allowed to see that last part. You weren't to remember that last part. You could experience, but you had to forget it, or you couldn't see it." And to me, that's an external level of control that I find very difficult to ascribe to a subconscious origin. I hope that makes sense to you, Kenton.
It does, and it helps me understand your work as well. For those viewers today who are fascinated by this topic, I would recommend the start with Andrew's book, Dreamer, 20 Years of Psychic Dreams and How They Changed My Life, and then to take a look at kind of a resource here that Andrew's compiled of kind of background information, support, drawings. It's quite deep if you care to go to it. And when you're searching for Andrew's work, you very well might come across his other books on computer graphics and issues. Go to the Dreamer, the Dreams for Andrew, as the computer graphics might be another topic for you. Andrew,
Yeah.
let's carry this interview forward. In another one, maybe we can start to talk about physical, spiritual dimensions of the dreams.
Yeah, actually, I think I should add that because I only described why I look at there being an external versus an internal focus. But in my book, I've created a taxonomy for it so that it's a little bit easier to discuss. Now, this required me to invent a few terms, which some people find rather annoying, but in this case, I thought it was appropriate. I didn't like talking about side dreams as telepathic or well, precognitive, or I didn't like the word ghost because a ghost can be of a living person or a deceased person, or it could be a spirit that's not associated with the body. There are a lot of terms that are used in parapsychological research, or even just in discussing dreams, that I felt didn't quite adequately describe what I wanted to say. So one of the things that I found really important to organizing my book was to come up with the focus of a dream. And I found that the best way to do that was to separate things into what I call locales. So I would call the entire physical universe a locale. And then I would call the entire, you might call it like a heaven-like or a spiritual universe as another locale. And the space in between the two that allows congress between them is another locale. And I gave these all names. Now, I used Greek for this, or was it Latin? No, Latin, sorry. So mundus just means environment, world, universe. So they all start with mundus, and then the physical universe would be limus, which just means mud, and that just is a way of expressing the idea that it's physical. So mundus limus, and then mundus sublimis, the world or universe of the sublime, which is roughly equivalent to heaven. The space between them, mundus alo, ALO, which stands for, you can think of it as the root to alimentation, and it's basically a place where you get assistance, like for a spirit guide might give you teaching in that environment, or give you some kind of measure of peace if you're going through difficult times, that kind of thing. So that's the mundus alo, it's this kind of in-between place. And then mundus divinus, or the universe of the divine, is something that I put above everything else, and that's where everything else descends from or is created from. I'm not quite sure if there actually is a mundus divinus separate from the mundus sublimis, but it made sense to me logically to segregate that, so I did. So I've got these 4 different locales that I use as a way to describe the focus of a dream. So if I'm dreaming about something that has a mundus limus focus or a physical universe focus, then I know that I'm looking at either like a poltergeist would have a mundus limus focus. So the poltergeist is a spirit, but he's interacting with our physical world, and that's what we're seeing. So that's a mundus limus focus. On the other hand, if I have a dream about my grandmother after she dies, and she's talking to me, that would be more of a mundus allo communication, because then I'm going to her, and that's where she's located, and she's not paying any attention to the physical world anymore. If, on the other hand, she's asking me to carry messages back to people, then that would be a mundus limus focus again. So I like to characterize these different foci as locales, because it helps segregate the dreams nicely, so that it's easier to talk about them.
Well, let's use that as the premise for our next session here, the mixture of physical, spiritual dimensions in the dreams. I'll sign off for now. Thank you for being with us today, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye bye.